So the fact is, my problem was that I never actually had the one thing I wanted to be. I mean, I was quite envious of the people who sort of like lived and breathed that one thing that they thought was the answer to all their prayers. For me, my problem was that I wanted to do everything. There was like 1,000,001 jobs that seemed interesting. But really, for me, it was all about doing something that I had a passion for. So when I would encounter something I was passionate about, whether it was a person or a company, I would go chase it, trying to convince them to give me a job. I wrote a guy who was opening a diner. I was obsessed with 1950s diners. And this guy at Columbia was opening a diner on the campus, so I wrote him. I wrote Robert Stigwood. He's the guy behind the Bee Gees. He had the rights to the movie Evita. And with my Argentina experience, I thought I was a shoo-in. Oh, yeah. I wrote to Outward Bound schools because I did that on a lark, and I loved Outward Bound, so I started writing to any Outward Bound school internationally. Lesotho, Nigeria, you should see those letters. But most of those letters came back unanswered, no big surprise. But one time, I actually did get an answer. So when I was in college, I actually had a travel column. Sort of did this short column about sort of key cities and sort of an insider's guide. If you want to be a local in New York, where would you go? That kind of an idea. And so it was in the 90s, I guess the late 80s. And the Gap at the time had a campaign that was quite popular. This dates me. It was called the Individuals of Style. It was a super popular campaign. It was when we actually shopped at the Gap. And most of the ads were famous people, and they did national celebrities as well as sort of local ones, generally wearing sort of simple white Gap t-shirts or turtlenecks, right? So I somehow came up with this brilliant idea of combining my travel guide with their campaign. Think branded entertainment before its time. So I take this, I mock it up into a book, I somehow finagle away, you're not surprised, into the Gap offices in San Francisco. Nothing comes of it. Fast forward a couple of years, and I'm at business school at Columbia. And I hear that Mickey Drexler, the CEO of the Gap, has just come to speak at the retailing class. And that gives me an idea. I take out that mock-up. Now you also know I'm a pack rat because I had held onto it. I whip it out. I write a letter. I put it in the mail. That was before email. And I send it to Mickey Drexler directly. Now it's finals, and the phone rings. And it's Mickey Drexler. Yeah, it was him on the phone. First I thought it was a joke, but it actually turned out to be Mickey. So he invited me out to San Francisco. We talked a little bit about the places I'd written about in San Francisco. And I went to his very glamorous offices, and we met. And he said to me, "This is really a marketing idea. You should go into marketing." And I thought, okay. I mean, the insider's guide never happened. If anybody wants to work on that with me, I still have the mock-up, clearly. But Mickey said you should go into marketing. And I thought, okay. To this day, when I see Mickey, I joke with him that I'm in this career because of him. I think it might be true. So I took his advice. I go into marketing. I have many jobs. Unlike Lisa, who just went, I've had like 150 jobs. I take a job, and it seems like a dream job. I'm the senior vice president of strategy at a new group at Ammirati Puris Lintos called the Brand Experience Group. Seems perfect. I get there, and it's a disaster, like really, really bad. So a couple weeks in, I get called in to the CEO, and he basically tells me that they're going to shut down the group. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what the heck has just happened to me? I'm now unemployed and pregnant. Oh yeah, it's always good to be unemployed and pregnant. And I have no idea what I want to do because I've tried so many things, I'm sort of out of ideas. So I remember that I'd had another idea, because I wasn't short on those, from earlier in my career, and I think to myself, well, I sort of have nothing to lose, so I might as well go for that, because who's going to hire an unemployed pregnant person who's super confusing? So I'd come up with this idea because I was one of the early people in the internet business, right? I was willing to leap early. So I'd worked for a company called City Search, really in the early days when they'd bought a company called MetroBeat, and I used to have to go on sales calls. Really, I was getting ready for a board meeting, and I would demo the product for like Danny Myers. I'd bring out that really heavy IBM computer. Does anybody remember those? And I'd plug it in because you needed a dial-up. Oh yeah, that was really taking your life in your own hands. And then I'd demo the product. But every time I had to do that, I had to carry around a laptop in what was a really ugly padded bag that was like pleather. So I was really embarrassed by it. And so then I would put it in another bag so that it didn't show. And I kept thinking to myself, why doesn't somebody make an attractive computer bag? Why do I have to double bag it? I mean, right? It seems like an obvious idea. So I thought, heck, why not me? So I take a class at the FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology. So I take an accessory class, and I make the ugliest belts and bags known to mankind. I wish I had a picture because it would be like that terrible jazz picture. They were terrible. But I met somebody, and in the process, by the end of the semester, we'd started a bag business. We actually started making functional bags fashionable. And there's actually a whole category of them: computer bags, pet carriers, diaper bags. So we made these bags, and I started going on sales calls, bags in tow, going door to door. Nothing like point blank rejection like from small businesses. But one of these calls actually worked. And so our first customer turned out to be Barney's, New York. And I'd heard, just through the grapevine, because I read a lot, the Barneys didn't pay their bills. And I was like, out of my garage. So I said to the woman when she took the order, I said, we actually accept payment up front. And she said, okay. And that's what happened. I got the check, and we shipped to Barney's. So my final story for you is really about how I ended up here in the Windy City. I met Mark Hoplamazian, who's the CEO of Hyatt, at a Bloomberg conference. I was speaking on a panel at 7, him at 2, and we'd arranged to just have coffee. And we met, and we actually had a lot in common. I've done a lot of work around purpose, and Mark was on a purpose journey for Hyatt. And for me, sort of uncovering the purpose of a company is sort of like being a journalist, right? You're uncovering its DNA, trying to understand what makes it tick. And Mark had basically gone on this journey and had decided that he wanted to transform Hyatt through purpose. And I had a lot of experience in that. So we meet, a couple of phone calls later. I come back and I sit at the dinner table in New York and Chelsea, where we'd been living for 30 years. And I say to my husband, get ready for it, 2 teenagers, that we're going to be moving to Chicago. My daughter looks at me and she says, can't we go to London? So we pack up and we move to Chicago, a city I'd barely been to, and a new industry that I knew very little about except that I was a consumer. And my headline to you is, if that's not all in, I don't know what is. So my advice for you is actually quite simple. Go all in. Put fear aside. Really, that's the only way to be able to overcome obstacles and get to success. Fight for your ideas. Those ideas are going to take you places, and they may take you to places that you don't even expect.